So you're coming to Valencia, you got to get your kids in school. Outside of the minutia, the bureaucracy of enrolling your kids in school, there's some really important things to consider about where you're going to put your kids in school. And maybe that will affect where you want to live. We got that info for you right now.
So the first thing you probably want to know is what types of schools are available here in Valencia. Generally, there are public schools, private schools, and a thing called concertada. So public schools, that's pretty straightforward. It's free, government-funded school, available to anyone at no cost. They have the government curriculum and benchmarks that they have to meet, and publicly funded. The private schools are, as you can imagine, the most expensive option. Generally, they are outside of the city, although there are a couple of them in town. They can range anywhere from 3,000 to 10,000 euros per year per student. There might be some even higher than that.
If you have 7 kids, you probably can't afford the private
Probably
school,
not.
But you probably couldn't afford it in the US either.
The private schools are generally your international schools. They might be taught in English. They could be taught in Spanish. There's even one here that's in German. So there are several options available depending on what country you're moving here from and what your language preference is. And generally, all of those private schools will offer some kind of US equivalent diploma or the British equivalent or some sort of international diploma option for graduation. Now, concertados are a little bit of both. They have public funding. They need to meet the same benchmarks and curriculum criteria as the public schools, but they also are privately funded by your tuition mostly and have a lot more flexibility on their teaching style, the curriculum they choose to use, and things like that. It's important to know that most of them here in Valencia are also religiously affiliated, specifically Catholic. So
to me, that kind of reminds me of like charter schools in Texas, for example, that are kind of more religious based.
It's a lot like a charter school. The fees for the concertados usually run around 500 to 1,500 a year per student. It depends on the specific school. They get to set their own rates. And there will be additional fees on top of that, tuition such as uniforms, school supplies, lunch fees, and if it provides transportation, then there will most likely be an additional transportation expense.
An interesting thing to me about the buses is these buses are like big, nice charter buses, like the same that the soccer teams ride on. It's not a school bus per se. It's a nice, big, cool, fancy bus. But your kid is probably going to spend a lot of time on that comfortable, nice bus if that's what you choose to do. Good job. You're very smart. Grade levels. We were lucky enough with 7 kids to experience pretty much all of them. For the young kids, kind of like pre-K, is called infantil. And that
includes 3 years of school, which is not obligatory. So it's up to you if you want to enroll your small children in this program. But it's basically for 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and 5-year-olds. The last year of infantil is the 5-year-olds, and that is the kindergarten equivalent.
So then you have primaria, primary school.
Primaria goes from 1st through 6th grades if you're speaking on the American grade level.
Part of what happens is comedor, so lunch break, which is 3 hours long. It's like siesta. The kids get out for lunch and then they stay and play in the patio in the schoolyard for a couple of hours, and that's their lunch break. And then they go back to class from 3:30 to about 5, and then you pick them up at 5. Now, some schools are a little different than that. Some schools have elected to end their school day at 2:30, 2 o'clock.
Yeah, 1:30 or
At
2.
1.
The majority of schools do the split day. But at all of the schools, no matter what their classroom hours are, they all offer lunch and they all offer additional activities that extend through the end of the workday. So even if your child is enrolled at a school that gets out at 1 or 2 for the day, the school must provide a lunch option and additional activities for the children to participate in until around 4:30 or 5.
So it's also important to know that you could pick the kids up for that break and take them home and feed them lunch at home and have family time during that 3-hour break, 2.5, 3-hour break. So in our first year with our 2 little guys, we did actually pick them up from school and bring them home for lunch because that was part of what was important to us, was having more family time. And also we just weren't, we didn't know what would happen if they would need that break during the day just for their brains to be able to speak English. It turned out that wasn't necessary, but it sure was great family time for us. So 3-hour kind of siesta break in the middle of school where they have lunch and recess, You can let them stay there, or you can pick them up from school and bring them home. After primaria, you have instituto.
Instituto, yes, which is
middle school.
Secundario. It goes by a few different nicknames here. So you'll hear a lot of people saying ESO, which is ESO, which is Educación Secundario Obligatorio, which just means it's the secondary level of school that's obligatory. And this, if you're speaking on U.S. grade standards, this is 7th through 10th grade. That's it. I don't know why I feel like I have to keep going.
Because I always keep going. After Cuarto de la ESO, the 4th year of ESO, which is sophomore year in the U.S., once you finish that, age 15, 16, when you're graduating, school is no longer obligatory. Kids can go to work, they can go to trade school. So after 16, you're done with school if you want to be. After that comes bachillerato, 2 years of baccalaureate degree. What we love about that is there's art track, there's sciences, humanities, or kind of just to continue on with general studies. Our kids, several of our kids have done the art track because they were in music or they were into arts, illustrations, comic book, all that stuff. If you have that kid who already knows they're on a path for these certain things, they can really start to focus on that and not waste more time doing stuff that they're not great at or that they just hate.
So what's important to know about the bachillerato level is that it's mostly for kids who definitely plan to continue on to university. If you opt out of bachillerato level, enrolling in university is then very, very difficult after that. So if your child is on the university track, then you really want them to finish out those last 2 years of high school, which are the equivalent of 11th and 12th grade in the U.S. system.
Grado medio, grado superior. In those 2 years, if you don't go on the bachillerato track, you can do what's more like trade school, or you can go to an arts high school that's specifically about textiles and sewing or whatever. It's really focused. And it is more designed towards heading into a trade. We think that's really cool as well. You can go from that after you do grado medio, 2 years of grado medio, 2 years of grado superior. You can then, after 2 years of grado superior, go into university without having to take the entrance exam, depending on what program you elect. So it's kind of cool, but that ends up being kind of 2 high school years and then, right?
It's 2 additional years of schooling to go that route.
Those are just some things that I personally just think is really cool, that if you've got the kid who already knows what they love, they can start really aiming for that and not waste time on certain general studies that they're not into.
The programs they offer are varied and really cool. They have cooking, they have like hairdresser school, esthetician type things where your 17-year-old who knows they don't want to go to university but wants to start a career as a beautician or as an auto mechanic, as plumbing, electrician, all the trades like that. Your child can go ahead and start focusing on that. It's really cool.
Okay, guys, last few thoughts and tips about this, because this video was just getting way too long, so we didn't have a nice little ending for you. But college entrance exams after bachillerato, after you finish high school, las PAU, P-A-U, Prueba de Acceso a la Universidad, is the college entrance exam. We might even do a whole video on that at some point, because that's a thing, and that's one test that people do tend to get stressed out about, getting into college. But speaking of testing, there's no standardized testing here. So I don't know how it is in your state, but in Texas over the years, there's all the kinds of standardized testings that make everyone just lose their brains. Teachers and students and parents are all stressed out alike. That's not happening here, not in Valencia. It's amazing. And then finally, there's no homeschool here. Okay. But if you had your kid in homeschool, how would they be learning Spanish anyway? So thanks for watching. Hope that was useful information as you consider this Valencia adventure you might be coming on.